is present to witness this historic event. We ask you to continue to guide and protect the leadership as it executes the vision of the government and by extension the ministry. May you bless us all and bless our nation of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Lord, for listening to our humble supplication.
Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Roads and Transport, the Honorable Ansel Dennis, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Senator the Honorable Alison West, Minister of Planning and Development, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Youth Development and National Service, the Honorable Simon de Nobrega, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and Communications, Senator the Honorable Randall Mitchell, Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, the Honorable Shampoo Kujo, Minister of Sport and Community Development, and Member of Parliament for Tobago West, the Honorable Ayala Webster Roy, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for Tobago East, the Honorable Foster Cummins, Minister in the Ministry of Roads and Transport, Assemblyman Joel Jack, Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy. Other Secretaries and Assistant Secretaries, Ms. Bernadette Solomon Karoma, Chief Administrator, Ms. Ethelyn John, Permanent Secretary of the Office of the Prime Minister, Central Administrative Services, Tobago, Mr. Ronald Alfred, Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Roads and Transport, Mr. Herbert George, Chairman of NITCO, Mr. Lyle Alexander, Chairman of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Stephen Gardner, Deputy Chairman of NITCO, Ms. Esther Farmer, President of NITCO, Mr. Christopher James, President, Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, Ms. Diane Haddad, Chairman, Tobago Division of Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Martin George, President, Tobago Business Chamber, the family of the late A.P.T. James, specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to this special occasion that has been in the making since 2018. We are all here to celebrate the commissioning of the A.P.T. James into service for the sea bridge between Trinidad and Tobago. To start things off, I would like to welcome the Chairman of NITCO, Mr. Herbert George, to offer his warm welcome.
Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport. The Honorable Ansel Dennis, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. Senator the Honorable Alison West, Minister of Planning and Development. The Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Youth, Development and National Service. The Honorable Simone de Nobrega, Minister of Communication. Senator the Honorable Randall Mitchell, Minister of Tourism, Culture and Arts. The Honorable Shafa Kodjo, Minister of Sport and Community Development and Member of Parliament for Tobago West. The Honorable Anna Webster Roy, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for Tobago East. The Honorable Foster Cummins, Minister in the Ministry of Works and Transport. Assemblyman Joel Jack, Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy. Other Secretaries and Assistant Secretaries, Mrs. Bernadette Solomon, Kuruma Chief Administrator. Ms. Diane Haddad, Chairman, Tobago Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Mr. Martin George, President, Tobago Business Chamber. Family of the late A.P.T. James. Special invited guests. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity as well, on behalf of the directors, management, and staff of NITCO, to welcome you here to our ceremony this afternoon to hand over the A.P.T. James. Now, a little over 2 years ago, the sea bridge was, had become very unreliable. The vessels that were being operated on the service were old, and they were in disrepair. And at the very least, they required extensive maintenance work so as to ensure that they were seaworthy and that they satisfied class requirements. Even so, there was no guarantee of dependable, trouble-free service after the needed extensive maintenance work was done. The government then commissioned NIDCO to continue and complete the procurement of 2 new fast ferries for use on the service, so as to replace the old ones that were limping and to improve this level of service on the sea bridge. NIDCO worked closely with the Ministry of Works, along with other experts drawn from the Port Authority. We also had the assistance of personnel from UTT's Marine Technology Center. We had a contribution from business, and we worked together to consider proposals from 2 shortlisted Australian shipbuilders. People or shipbuilders with whom we had a historic working relationship. The shipbuilders I'm speaking about were Austal and Incat. Now, Austal previously built all our water taxis, in addition to some other vessels in the Coast Guard. Incat built the 2 vessels that we are about to replace, the TT Express and the TT Spirit. So we had the confidence that those people could have given us what we were seeking. So the team received contributions or live presentations from those 2 shortlisted shipbuilders. And our focus then was not so much to look at what they were offering, but to ensure that they knew what we needed. So during those contributions, we clarified the brief. We outlined to them what our requirements were, and they were then able to go back, tweak their proposal, and submit to us a price proposal for doing the vessels. NIDCO evaluated the submissions and made recommendations to Cabinet. Cabinet subsequently approved NIDCO's going out and procuring one of the vessels from Austal and the other from Incat. Today, Mr. Honorable Prime Minister, NIDCO is here today to make a delivery. NIDCO wants to deliver the first of the 2 vessels, the A.P.T. James. And NIDCO not only wants to deliver to our government and client, but we also want to deliver to the Tobago House of Assembly, and by extension, the users of the service, and by further extension, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We have no doubts that the vessel that we are about to, that we are delivering will be fit for purpose and will give us many years of satisfactory service. And we say so almost experientially, because you will recall, well, I have been getting very positive feedback on the service of the JDLV that is being used, that has been for the past year and a half on time charter working on the sea bridge. Indeed, it started in May 2018. May 2018? No, I'm sorry. It started in 2019, sorry, July 2019. And I'm saying so because the JDLV is the sister vessel of the A.P.T. James, having been designed and built by the same shipbuilder. And the JDLV was built in 2010. So we are now 10 years on, and we have the A.P.T. James. So the A.P.T. James is, it reflects all the changes, all the improvements that occurred during the 10 years. Improvements in technology, improvements in equipment, improvements in comfort to passengers. So our point is, if you were so enamored by the service you received from the JDLV, you'll be that much more satisfied with the service from the A.P.T. James. I want to also assure you that the A.P.T. James was built to the strictest standards. It was built in accordance with the 2000 High Speed Craft Code and the SOLAS 74 Convention. Those are two overarching sets of standards that make reference to other secondary codes. So once you comply with the primary, you also have to comply with the secondary. So it was built to those standards. Other particulars of the A.P.T. James, and I will now turn to, give those other particulars of the A.P.T. James, were as follows. As we said, it was designed and built by Austal, and it was done in the Vietnam Vung Tau shipyard, the Vietnam shipyard. There. The overall contract sum was USD $73,550,000. The overall length of the vessel, 94 meters. The waterline length was 90 meters, or is 90 meters. The passenger capacity is 926 passengers plus 20 crew members, giving you a total of 946. Vehicle carrying capacity, 250 cars, or 222 cars plus 90 truck lane meters. So, if you have a mixture of goods vehicles, as you will probably have when the Cabo Star, is off service, the A.P.T. James can accommodate some good vehicles, and we have 90 truck lane meters to accommodate those trucks. In fact, the axle load for those trucks will have to be 9 tons for single axle, and for double axle it must be 12 tons. So bear that in mind. The draft of the vessel is 3.3 meters. The speed of the vessel, 37.5 knots at 90% of the maximum continuous rating. Today, on our way up, we were doing at one stage 38. All right, so we are getting getting even more than the design speed. The dead weight of the vessel, 593 tons. The contract started in November 2018, and it ended in June 2020. But of course, we had COVID there, so it took a bit longer. The classification society is DNVGL, and that is a society that is required for, they will establish and maintain technical standards for construction and operation. So you have to satisfy those conditions before you are given certificates and so to operate the vessel anyway. And the flag state, Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you the fullest assurance that the A.P.T. James, as we are delivering today, is fit for purpose, and it is fully certified to commence operation on the sea bridge. All certificates are in hand to use that vessel on the sea bridge. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. George. Our next speaker this afternoon is the Minister of Works and Transport, I ask that you put your hands together and help me welcome to the podium Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Ansel Dennis, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Senator the Honorable Alison West, Minister of Planning and Development, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Youth Development and National Service, Senator the Honorable Randall Mitchell, Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, the Honorable Shamfa Kojo, Minister of Sports and Community Development and Member of Parliament for Tobago West, the Honorable Ayana Webster Roy, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for Tobago East, the Honorable Foster Cummins, Minister in the Ministry of Works and Transport, the Honorable Simon de Nobrega, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Assemblyman Joel Jack, Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy, other secretaries and assistant secretaries, Ms. Bernadette Solomon, Chief Administrator, Ms. John, Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Central Administrative Service, Tobago, Mr. Ronald Alfred, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport, Mr. Navin Ramsingh, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport, Mr. Herbert George, Chairman of NIDCO, Colonel Retired Lyle Alexander, Chairman of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Stephen Gardner, Deputy Chairman of NIDCO, Ms. Esther Farmer, President of NIDCO, Mr. Christopher James, President of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, Ms. Diane Haddad, Chairman of the Tobago Division of Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Martin George, President of the Tobago Business Chamber, Mr. Horace Amin, President of the Truckers Association, family of the late A.P.T. James, special invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Now, today has to be a memorable day for me as Minister of Works and Transport. Because why I'm particularly happy about today, I was appointed in November of 2016. And the first person that I would have met with would have been in December of 2016, late November 2016, would have been 3 delegations. One from the Port Authority, one from the union at the port, and one from a supplier of vessels to the port. I was a bit taken back as to why, within the first month of my appointment, I had these 3 delegations to deal with. There and then I realized we had a serious challenge on the sea bridge. I was appointed as Minister of Works and Transport to ensure, and the government at the day was elected into office to ensure that whatever problems we meet, we fix the problems. And there and then, I identified the sea bridge as one of my major challenges. I came across to Tobago. I met with the Tobago Chamber of Commerce. I brought an entire delegation from Trinidad, including the port, everyone who was associated with the sea bridge. And we recognized that we had some serious challenges and we had to fix the problem. I remember speaking to one of the former chairmen at the port and indicating to her that her biggest challenge would be to fix this sea bridge once and for all. Because if you go back to our 2015 manifesto, as a PNM government, we did indicate the sea bridge will be given that priority to ensure that we have a reliable, safe, and dependable sea bridge. Identifying the problems on the sea bridge, we decided that we have to have a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term plan to fix it. Today we are rolling out Package A of the long-term plan. Package A would have been the A.P.T. James, the purchase of a custom-built vessel Package B will be the delivery of the Boko Reef. And I'm happy to say that this morning, the vessel left en route to home. So we are expecting that vessel sometime next month. I say this because I remember coming to Tobago, and not only in Tobago, in Trinidad, the cry was the sea bridge, the sea bridge, the sea bridge. And we told the population that we could not get vessels on a shelf in a supermarket. We were pounded, people were coming down on us, especially me as the minister. And we tried to explain, look, we have to, vessels are not just out there on a shelf. We went out, and you remember the fiasco with trying to get a vessel that would satisfy us. Sometime after we got the Galleon Passage, we went out to lease a vessel. There was no vessel out there available for lease. There was a vessel for purchase, the Galleon Passage. The government purchased the Galleon Passage. But we always told the population that this was an interim. This was not the solution. The solution would have been the purchase of 2 vessels that were custom built for us. We had to wait a while. But I'm happy this morning, and I want to personally thank the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, because he made it happen. He made it happen. With the help of the government of Australia, Trinidad and Tobago can boast today that we have 2 of the newest vessels, passenger vessels in the world. And for some people that might, be something small. For me and for us as Trinidadians, we should be very proud that a little country like Trinidad and Tobago could design these vessels to suit us and have one of the best manufacturers in the world manufacture these vessels. This reminds me of remember the OPVs that we had designed, and we were criticized that they couldn't work, and then they ended up being the flagship of the Brazilian Navy. Today I am proud that we can design these vessels for us, and when you put them on the world map, the world looking at them. Every vessel, these vessels go into port, NITCO was getting calls as to compliments on the vessels. What I want to urge our citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we will do our part to ensure that the vessels are well maintained. Because we do have an international company that is actually managing the vessels. We have a combination of local and foreign crew on the vessels. We will do our part, but it is up to the users of the vessel that will determine the length of time that those vessels will remain in that pristine condition. I want to ask everybody who is using the vessels, let us respect the vessels. Let us treat the vessels as our own assets, because they are our assets. And when you come on that vessel this morning, when I came on that vessel for the first time this morning, I was quite impressed. I was quite impressed. And these vessels are built to last, but they are not built to be used as in any other way except the right way. So I wanted this morning to thank NIDCO, to thank Minister Stuart Young, and most important, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who made this possible for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. Again, I want to urge the users of this vessel, let us please treat these vessels as our own. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Sinanan. Next on the program, we have the Chief Secretary and Secretary of Tourism, Culture and Transportation in the Tobago House of Assembly, the Honorable Ansel Dennis.
Thank you very much. Of course, permit me to recognize a Tobago son of the soil, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Minister of Works and Transport, Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, our 2 beautiful MPs from Tobago, Member of Parliament for Tobago West, Honorable Shampa Kodjo, and Tobago East, Honorable Ayana Webster Roy, other ministers of government, permanent secretaries, Chief Administrator, Mrs. Bernadette Solomon Koruma, Tobago House of Assembly Deputy Chief Secretary, Mr. Joel Jack, Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development, Mrs. Tracy Davidson Celestine, the Chairman and other members of the NIDCO Board, Chairman and other members of the Port Authority Board, other distinguished guests, family members of the late A.P.T. James, members of the media. Today is a good day. Today is an auspicious day, and it's a day that all of us here in Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago should be proud of. Because here we have the A.P.T. James in all its glory and all its splendor, docked right here in Scarborough, Tobago. And for me, and I believe for every citizen of this country, and especially the residents here in Tobago, it is in fact a proud moment. And to me, it signals the commitment of this government under the leadership of a Tobagonian Prime Minister to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, as we have never seen before over the last 10 years, this level of commitment to the people of Tobago and our development. And it is in that context that I want to say thanks to Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley and his government for placing tremendous emphasis on the development of Tobago in an unprecedented way over the last 5 years. But of course, I can reflect on middle 2017 when the Minister of Works was under tremendous pressure. By extension, the Tobago House of Assembly was under tremendous pressure. And there was quite a significant level of unease and distress experienced among Tobagonians, especially the various stakeholders. But this government committed to fixing the problem, because at the end of the day, noise was made and noise could not fix the problem. Protest could not fix the problem. Even a swim to Toko could not fix the problem. What was required was decisive leadership and action. And here we are today, 3 years later, and it may sound like a long time. But I want to suggest that what we have been able to achieve in terms of fixing the sea bridge in just a matter of 3 years is in fact commendable. And again, I want to salute the Prime Minister and his team and all those who played a significant role, the team at NIDCO, the team at the port, for embracing the opportunity to partner with the government of Australia to ensure that we deliver not only one vessel, but 2 of the most modern, state-of-the-art vessels in the world at this point in time. So we have the A.P.T. James today, and within the next 2 months or so, we should have the Boko Reef, and I think within the next 3 or so years, we should be having our own cargo vessel as well. And therefore, the sea bridge is in a good place, at least for the next 15 years or so, depending on how well we manage these vessels. And that presents a number of opportunities for us here in Tobago. And yes, the vessel belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But I want to suggest to the country that this vessel or these vessels allow the people of Tobago to adjust our stance and adjust our circumstances so that Tobago can contribute more significantly to the economy and development of the entire country. And I want to focus basically on 2 areas. One is agriculture. And of course, the vessel is aptly named the A.P.T. James. Interestingly, aptly spells A.P.T.L.Y. A Tobago son of the soil, a man who contributed significantly to the development of Tobago in many, many ways, a hero of the people of Tobago, and therefore it is an opportunity for us to reflect on his legacy and his contributions to the development of this island and country. But I'm saying to the people of Tobago, this is not only an opportunity for reflection, it is an opportunity for us to honor the legacy of this great man by ensuring that we utilize these vessels in such a way to advance, firstly, our ability to produce food. Because one thing that crisis revealed to me personally as a Tobagonian during the year 2017 is that we here in Tobago were not producing enough food. And therefore the fact that the crisis on the sea bridge exposed that weakness meant that there was a need for us to adjust here in Tobago. And I want to give the country the assurance that that adjustment has begun, and Tobago and the people of Tobago is well on its way to producing more food, not only to feed ourselves here on this island, but to feed the entire country of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore I expect, based on a number of initiatives that we have taken on in the Tobago House of Assembly, the TADCO arrangements, the arrangements to ensure that farmers in one of the most productive locations in Tobago, by the way, Tobago has the best soils in the country, and Tobago has some of the more hard-working farmers in the country, and therefore I have every confidence in the ability of Tobago and Tobagonians to adjust and to rise to the occasion in this year and in this season. And therefore I expect that during this year, by the later half of this year, we will have a situation where there will be more food leaving Tobago to go to Trinidad than food that comes from Trinidad to Tobago. And therefore I want to say to the people of Tobago that let us not simply focus on the 60,000 that we have residing on this island, but let us place more emphasis on the Trinidad marketplace, which has some 1.3 or 1.4 million persons. The other opportunity that we must embrace has to do with our tourism sector. Of course, we are in the midst of a pandemic that has caused international tourism to grind to a halt. Our borders are closed at this point in time, and therefore we must rely on domestic tourism. And therefore these two new vessels will add the kind of predictability and the kind of efficiency that we have not been able to have for the last 10 years or more. And therefore it creates opportunities for even the people in Trinidad to get to the better half or the most beautiful part of the country here in Tobago. And therefore we are looking forward to the continued partnership with our stakeholders in Trinidad, with the Ministry of Tourism, and of course with our various stakeholders here. I see Mr. Chris James from the Hoteliers Association and other business stakeholders. We look forward to the continued collaboration so that we can bring more people to this island, so that persons can experience the trip on two of the best vessels, two of the best fast ferries in the world at this point in time, and come to this island and experience tourism in a meaningful way. And therefore I want to once again congratulate the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and to say to you, Prime Minister, in your face, that the people of Tobago are indeed grateful and thankful for the action that was taken to bring this kind of predictability to the sea bridge between Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, congratulations to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Congratulations to all of us. This is in fact the dawn of a new era in inter-island transportation, and in Tobago making a bigger contribution to the country of Trinidad and Tobago, especially in an economic context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Secretary, for your remarks. At this time, it's my pleasure to call on stage to deliver the feature address the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Permit me, ladies and gentlemen, to acknowledge in our presence this limited gathering at an event which would have been attracting quite a large number of Tobagonians, but this being 2021, in the times that we live, we have to restrict our participation. And I trust and know that there are many people in Trinidad and Tobago who are not physically in this room, but who are tuned in to this very auspicious occasion which has been long in coming. So I would like to acknowledge the presence of my colleague, and I may say protege, Chief Secretary Ansel Dennis, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, my cabinet colleagues, who are a few of them are present here by virtue of the portfolios they hold in the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the Minister of Works and Transport and his team, Minister in the Ministry of Works and Transport with him, Mr. Foster Cummings, Minister Rohan Sinanan, who has mentioned that he was the man with the bullseye on his chest for the last 5 years or thereabouts on this issue. My other colleagues in the cabinet are 2 Tobago MPs, members of parliament, who too were in the firing line. Minister Ayana Webster Roy of Tobago East, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, and Minister Shamfa Kojo, Member of Parliament for Tobago West, who represents the people of Tobago West, who did have a lot to gain and to lose and to say about this issue. We have with us this morning also the Minister of Communication, Minister Simon de Nobrega, and the Minister of Youth, Minister Fitzgerald Hines, Youth Development, because this boat represents the future of opportunities and participation of our young people in particular. And of course, we have the Minister of Tourism, somewhere here with us, Minister Randall Mitchell, Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, and of course representing the Paymaster. Minister of Finance, we have the Minister who is in the Ministry of Finance, who used to be in the Ministry of Finance when we entered these contracts. And we have her today as Minister of Public Administration, Minister Alison West. These are members of the cabinet where the decisions are made with far-reaching consequences, not the least of which is how do we obtain the money to get these items and how do we pay for them going forward. These are the group, this is the group of ministers who have that responsibility. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you, as we acknowledge in our presence, the Deputy Chief Secretary, Assemblyman Joel Jack, he too is a Minister of Finance here in Tobago. How do we pay? How do you obtain the monies? Other secretaries and assistant secretaries who are the ones in the firing line complaining what is being said about Tobago, what is happening to Tobago. Some people are saying that Tobago dead, Tobago gone through, Tobago. We're saying that we're going to fix these problems and there's going to be a day when the solutions are with us. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Administrator Ms. Bernadette Solomon Koruma, and of course the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister in Tobago. Many of you don't know that the Prime Minister has an office in Tobago. Central Administrative Service. equipped with permanent secretary and staff. My favorite staff in the Ministry of the Office of the Prime Minister is the Tobago staff, who permanently complain that they don't see their minister enough in the office. But I'm in Tobago a lot, but I don't spend time with them. I spend it with the people in the road. But ladies and gentlemen, let me acknowledge Permanent Secretary Ethelyn John and Deputy Permanent Secretary Mr. Ron Alfred in the Ministry of Works, and of course the Chairman of the Port Authority, where this vessel operates between the two ports of Port of Spain and Port of Scarborough, Lieutenant Colonel retired Lyle Alexander, who just happens to be a Tobagonian. And of course, he's chairman of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and has been in place. He was there when all the bacchanal was taking place. We had one chairman of the port who retired, and we had the replacement was Colonel Lyle Alexander, who has been there since, holding the fort, and I dare say, delivering with us the solutions for you. I want to acknowledge and pay a particular regard to and say a particular compliment of good wishes and thanks to the staff at NIDCO, led by Chairman George. I know how that went. I know Mr. Herbert George doesn't work for the government. He's the chairman of a state enterprise, NIDCO, and NIDCO is an executing agency. All that has happened here today in terms of the physical delivery, the office work, and the driving of the process to go from an intention to have this vessel to it being birthed here today, Mr. George and his team at NIDCO, and his deputy chairman, Mr. Stephen Gardner, who also functions as an advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister. They and their staff, including Ms. Esther Farmer, who is president of NIDCO, they had the responsibility to convert the government's decision and policy and convert the contract and its operations into a vessel that turns up in Tobago in January 2021. And I want to thank them very sincerely, because it was not easy, and I must apologize for the harassment that they would have got from some people in the government who shall remain nameless. But we all together as a team drove this process, and the outcome is pleasing to us. I want to acknowledge in our presence those people who at one time could easily have been identified and described as enemies of the government. The others described them as voices of Tobago's interests, who consistently raised the importance of and the difficulty of the absence of an adequate ferry service to Tobago. We in the government could only have said to them, it's a problem that we know. Our responsibility is there. Unfortunately, the solution is not as easy as shouting at us. But we are going to get to the shipyards, and we are going to get our vessels. And today the vessels are here. And I thank Mr. Chris James of the Tourism Association. He's the president. And I also would thank Ms. Diane Haddad for her kind words over the years. Wherever they were, wherever those words were, I want to thank her for being on the issue. And I mean, I actually heard one of my friends say it is because he swam to Toko while we bought the boat. So maybe I should thank him too. Because this has been a national issue, the connection between Trinidad and Tobago. And I think all of us, wherever we were, all of us must be pleased and proud that a problem that seemed to have been strangling us, today when that boat goes into service in the next, whenever few days or so, that problem can now be taken off the list of problems in Trinidad and Tobago. But of course, when you take off one problem, like the Hydra, a new head grows. Because when this problem of no ferry comes off, the problem of maintenance of this item becomes the next problem for Trinidad and Tobago. And we better understand that. So ladies and gentlemen, problems don't just go away and we end up in nirvana. Once you solve a problem, another one replaces it, sometimes of the same breeding. So Mr. Martin George, who is president of the Tobago Business Chamber, I hope that the opportunity that this connection satisfaction has now, Mr. George is now arriving. Mr. George, please have a seat. And welcome. I was just acknowledging your presence as president of the Tobago Business Chamber. And most importantly, I understand that some members of A.P.T. James family here, one of whom, what, is that true? They were on the boat. Okay, because one of whom I have not seen since I left school, a schoolmate of mine. So I'm anxiously waiting to meet her today. But I want to say that the family of A.P.T. James should join us in acknowledging the placing of the names of one of the nation's outstanding sons, and certainly a visionary who saw Tobago long before the rest of Tobagonians would have seen Tobago in the way we see Tobago today. I'm leader of the PNM, and A.P.T. James politically was an opponent of the PNM. In 1956, the PNM was defeated in Tobago. A.N.R. Robinson of the PNM was defeated by A.P.T. James. Such was his popularity in Tobago. And of course, as the head of the PNM today, I'm particularly pleased to have personally made that decision to name this vessel after A.P.T. James. And the reason being that we, the people of Tobago in particular, should know who A.P.T. James is, what he stood for. Granted, he fought the PNM in the political arena, but it was the arrival of the PNM when James was the politician in Tobago, and there was a contest for political office. But what struck me as I grew up in Tobago was the representation and the singularity of purpose of a man who was ahead of his time, raising issues that others felt ought not to have been raised, especially in the way he raised them. Speaking of Tobago, a vision for Tobago that he was advocating, being insulted for it in the parliament by others who did not have that vision. And eventually I, too, recognized the breadth and the clarity of that vision and wished that he was a PNM MP. So every time that vessel pulls up here, and for the 30 years, not 15 years, for the 30 or more years that this vessel will ply these ports, it is my wish that every child in Tobago would know the answer to the question, who is A.P.T. James? Today, I want to call on every teacher in every civics class in Tobago, and I hope there are civics classes in Tobago, to answer that question to our children and to those adults who must admit that they don't know the answer. Who is A.P.T. James? And when the question is answered, you'll understand why this vessel is named A.P.T. James. Great satisfaction for me, and I trust and I know that when you know through education that will come to you in the coming weeks, months, and years as to who was A.P.T. James, you too would be pleased that on this occasion, when we own this vessel, we chose to put his name on it as recognizing an individual who was outstanding, even if he was ahead of his time. And we are grateful for his service, and for that we thank his family and recognize, if not too late. So we have James Park in Scarborough, and we now have the A.P.T. James going to Port of Spain once or twice a day as the case might require. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to acknowledge our specially invited guests, members of the media, and of course, children wherever they are. This vessel ought to be with us for a long time. I'm nervous. I am nervous. This morning, a thought came across You know, we used to have a line that we used to be made to write in school, Bishop's High School. When you misbehaved, you used to be made to write a few hundred times, and one fella had to write it 1,000 times. That the way of the transgressor was exceedingly difficult. And sometimes my way is so difficult that I have to ask, what and where have I transgressed to the extent that I should have these problems? But it goes with the office. So this morning, I was dressed like this, waiting to come down and take part in this. And I was at the Prime Minister's residence in Blemming, which has a great view of Trinidad into the port here at Bacolet. And as I was getting ready to come here, because I didn't want to be late, because I too am anxious to see the vote for the first time. And I saw the vessel coming in out there, and of course I was very pleased. The vessel has arrived, it's coming to Tobago, it is coming now for the function that puts it into service in Trinidad and Tobago. We are accepting our vessel. And then the vessel stopped. I'm watching it, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, and I'm getting very, very nervous. And then I get a communication from my officers that there's a problem, there's a delay. And I said, don't tell me this vessel break down outside there. Because I know what Diane going to say. I know what Chris James is going to say. And I know what a particular tonker is going to say. What have I done to deserve this? And then I remember that line in Bishop's, the way of the transgressor. I said, but where did I transgress? I thought I was solving the problem. Why this boat is... Nah, and I must tell you, I was very disturbed. And then I hear it had to do with the scheduling in the port, where there was a vessel in port, and that's why the vessel couldn't come in. And I got a little bit angry, because I said, don't tell me the port can't schedule 2 vessels. But I understand there's a really good reason. But I trust Mr. Chairman of the port that the maintenance that is required to keep this vessel operational and pristine is something within the ability of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me begin by saying, I have received a number of WhatsApp from citizens warning me and beseeching me to tell the port to make sure that there is adequate security on this boat to prevent anybody from sabotaging anything on this boat. And today I so do. That might sound crazy to you all, but don't forget, there were instances before when a vessel that came here to solve this problem, there were people somewhere in this nation who saw it fit to go and throw orange and grapefruit and clothes in the toilet to clog it, to get the news that they require. Don't forget that when we opened the Brian Lara Stadium, on the night of the opening of Brian Lara Stadium, individuals went in there with clothes, jerseys, and stuffed it in the toilet and flooded the Brian Lara Stadium so that somebody could say that there's something wrong with the Brian Lara Stadium. We have those ragamuffins among us in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, this vessel costs $500 million. It's not a toy. It is not cheap. And is not to be treated lightly. It is a major investment by the people of Trinidad and Tobago towards the economic and other development of the people of Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago. And anybody who does not treat it as such is an enemy of this nation. And today, I'm saying to all the persons, those who would clean it, the engineers who will work on it, the port officers who will schedule it, you have a major responsibility. We couldn't buy 1 boat. We had to buy 2. Because if we only had 1, if, as it must go into dry docking to be serviced, then we have none in service. And I know that will then be the morning news. And that would be the complaint. So to avoid that, you have to have at least 2, so that in the event that 1 goes into dry dock, another 1 is on service. The Spirit and the Express, unlike this vessel being the first time since the Panorama that we have got a vessel purpose-built and built for us and we got a new vessel. Since the Panorama, we have not got a new vessel in this service between Trinidad and Tobago. The Express and the Spirit were two used vessels that we bought when we embark upon making it permanent that we should have a fast ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago. Let me remind you all, we didn't always have a fast ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago. I was a member of the cabinet of the Manning government when we raised this issue that a fast ferry between Trinidad and Tobago could do wonders for our economy and other aspects of our lives. So we asked an expert consultant to study. We do a study. And the report came into the cabinet. And the expert advised us that because of the nature of the sea between Trinidad and Tobago, between the Bocas and Scarborough, a fast ferry service could not work. And the cabinet was about to take that decision and end the story right there. And I said, this has to be madness. Because the sea between Australia, Southeast Australia, and Tasmania are about the worst in the world. And they are the world's leaders in designing, building, and operating fast ferries. So if the ferries that are operating in Western Canada and in Australia could be treating with the seas between Tasmania and Sydney, then obviously this report is not a good report. The cabinet backed away. And we said we will have it tried. We'll try it. We'll try it. And we hired on a short lease the cat. Remember the cat? The cat also started, but the cat came as an experiment to see if a vessel of that nature could handle these waters and in fact become the basis of the service between Trinidad and Tobago. And I dare say that the cat arrived and confirmed that a fast ferry can operate and operate well. So the cat was the pioneer. And we eventually replaced it. We went to market. And as Mr. George said early on, you can't go to Hilo and buy a vessel like that. You have to order it and build it, or you buy used ones. At the time when the cabinet took the decision to have a regular fast ferry service, the most we could have got was the Express, which I think was about 17 years old, and or some similar figure. Don't hold me to the actual number, but the Express was older and the Spirit was a bit newer. I think the Spirit was about 9 years, something like that, 10 years. So the Spirit was 10 years older when it came here, and the Express was older. And even though we had two vessels, we fell down on maintenance, either because of the pressure of service, but if you do not maintain the vessels, if you allow them not to go in when they are supposed to go in, when they are scheduled to go in for the regular maintenance, what you are in effect doing is using them to destruction. It's like your own motor car. If you don't change the oil in your car, it will keep running, but eventually you'll be driving the car to destruction. But if it is maintained in a scheduled way, it can last for years and years and years and years. So if we received the Spirit at 10 years, and it's still with us, what, 10, 12 years ago, how many years ago? This brand new vessel has a shelf life of upwards of 30 years, depending on how it is maintained and utilized. Just like a car. Treat it well, you could have it for a long time. Treat it badly, it's going to have a short life. Same thing applies to this vessel. So at a cost of $500 million, we should aim to have this last as long as possible. And then the cost per day for this vessel would be reduced as you go forward into the other decades. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the time of rejoicing for the people of Tobago and of Trinidad and Tobago. I know there are many, many Trinidadians who are anxious to get to Tobago now knowing that they come in comfort and safety. These vessels, built by these Australian companies, are built for people all over the world. Go and Google it. Google Incat and Hostal, and you will see each vessel is numbered. Each hull has a number. Number on the Spirit, number on the Express, number on this one. And you will see where they are. When we set about to solve this problem by getting new vessels, there were two problems. Problem number one was we are in an economic downturn. At the time when we were trying to solve this problem by new vessels, the Minister of Finance was and still is struggling to pay public servants when the month comes. We had other expensive projects on the way. But if we take a decision to buy new vessels, we are automatically taking the decision to spend a lot of money. $1 billion for 2 vessels. So ladies and gentlemen, as Prime Minister, my problem was how we do that. The Minister of Finance problem was the money just is not there. And then I realized that the vessel that we had in service, or have in service, Spirit and Express, Ostal and Inca, and of course the water taxis, we had been in relationship with Australia. They were bought on loans from the Australian OP. The external financing arrangements was done in Australia to buy those vessels. And I was going to London after a period when I had been invited by the Australians to visit Australia. I did not take up the invitation at the time when it was given to me. But a year and a half or thereabouts, probably 2 years after, when this issue confronted me and the solution had to be found, I thought we could talk to Australia. And that thought came to me because I was in London at a head of government meeting and Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull was also there. I sent Dennis Moses to find Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and ask for a bilateral with Trinidad and Tobago. And he agreed, and within hours, I was sitting down talking to Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, a small Commonwealth country with financial difficulties, talking to a large Commonwealth country which has budget surpluses, and who has within its borders the companies that make the vessels that we desperately need. I must tell you, all of you Tobagonians, people of Trinidad and Tobago, whatever this vessel does for us, however you look at it, one person we must thank, and thank very sincerely, is Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, former Prime Minister of Australia. Because as I outlined to him the relationship between the islands of Trinidad and Tobago, or Twin Island nation, and our economic stringency, and how a vessel like this could change the problems that we have and bring them to solutions and give us a future immediately, he was very understanding. He sent immediately for the foreign minister who was there at the time. She was found and she joined the meeting. And he put her on the phone to Australia, and I accepted the invitation to go to Australia. I did that, and I went to the shipyards in Australia to see what they were producing. What I found at the shipyards were not only these vessels being built, but I found a line as long as you could think, because to get one of these vessels, you have to go in line. Because in front of you are a lot of vessels being built for people all over the world. And if we were coming to join, we were at the end of the line. And under normal circumstances, we wouldn't have got one of these vessels at this time. It required a certain amount of diplomatic begging, you may call, and certain initiatives. And somewhere along the line, we were told, okay, it appears as though somebody who is ahead of you could give up their space, and Trinidad and Tobago will have that space. But of course, who gets the contract to build it? There are 2 companies in Australia that build it, Incat and Ostal. We could have gone out for tender, and then of course, one of them could have won the tender and built the 2 vessels. But if they were building the 2 vessels, the best chance we would have got is to get one in 2022 and another one in 2024. And of course, whoever won the contract would have had the contract for the 2 vessels. The cabinet decided we'll do otherwise. We'll put competition in there. Let the companies compete against each other. And I must tell you, they knew that who gave the best price and the best terms will get the contract. And the competition was fierce between these 2 companies, because they came in very, very close to one another in terms of giving us their best price, knowing that there was no 3rd place and there was no 2nd place. When we looked at it and the circumstance of when we will get the vessel, each one, if they were doing one, we could get a vessel in 2021, and one, in fact, it wasn't really meant to be in 2020, but COVID and that slowed down the delivery. This vessel should have been here and in service in 2020. I think it was July 2020 we were looking at, but of course, COVID made those time cases fall apart. And INCAT's price and Ostal's price were relatively close. The Buko Reef is a slightly larger vessel. It's a slightly faster vessel. That is the one that is built in Tasmania by INCAT. This one was built by Ostal, built in their Vietnam yard, and it is a slightly small. I think the Buku has over 1,000 plus passengers, and this one's. But basically, what the Australians do to make these world-class vessels, and why they're so popular around the world, is that they use the best of whatever is available around the world. The engines in here are German engines, and all the various parts that make up this vessel are about the best that's available from the world supply. And of course, Ostal and INCAT put it together to produce this vessel. And so Trinidad and Tobago, we've entered that realm. We had used vessels before. We know these vessels. And of course, we now have bought our own from, we were involved in the specifications of the vessel from the design phase coming forward, right? So we had an input. The vessel, I have not seen it yet, but I understand that there are different categories of seating. And let me just say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, there's nothing that is free. Somebody has to pay for it. And because we have specified this vessel in a certain way for a particular purpose, and the purpose is this: we want to put Tobago to be able to market a visit to Trinidad as a matter that is possible and an experience that is available once you come to Tobago as a tourist. You must be able to be in Tobago and go to Trinidad for whatever reason, even a day out, and come back to Tobago to sleep in Tobago if you want to, because the transportation is available. What that will do, it makes Tobago a destination with a difference. You didn't just come for sun, sea, wildlife, and the main ridge. We have added something else that you can have a day out in Trinidad. And the trip to Trinidad itself must be a part of the experience. I have not seen it yet, but I understand those of you who came up on the vessel, you could tell me that being on board and coming here in 2.25 hours and the comfort and safety on board, it's your experience. Your trip starts, your holiday starts when you board in Trinidad or when you board in Tobago going to Trinidad. That's the quality of the service. And the managers of Tobago and the managers of Trinidad, the port in Tobago, the port in Trinidad, we can now, because of the efficiency of these vessels, at 41 knots, if we want to make 2 trips to Tobago on any day, whether it's Easter, Christmas, Carnival, or what, we can do it. These vessels have the capacity to do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are entering a new realm. And the realm is the realm of possibility. And the realm is the realm of the future is now. It falls to the managers. One of the problems in this country is that somebody decided that we had had enough management training. And the Management Development Center, which had come into being because people of great knowledge and great vision had seen that the nation of Trinidad and Tobago had a significant deficiency in the management core. And there was a time when we had a Management Development Center, when certain people, maybe mostly those in the public service and others, were taken into management training, because without management, all fall down. And I haven't got the answer yet, but I think that the absence of the Management Development Center in Trinidad and Tobago is a great mistake, because we are failing at the management level. And let me tell all of you something. A certification from a university is not management training. Understand that. Anybody can get certified if you do what the exam requires. But if you have management experience and management training, real proper management training, then you are a valuable person. Recently, Somebody I know very well, businessman, told me he had a vacancy in his company and he advertised for it. And they sent him 5 people from a headhunting agency. 5 people came, and all of them were carrying huge certification from a local entity. And after he interviewed the 5 of them, he could hire none. And that is troubling. That is troubling. But what it emphasizes is the distance and the difference between certificate and useful experience and ability. We really should rethink this effort at management training. Because if the management is not there to do what I'm asking you to do, which is to use this vessel to shorten the distance between Trinidad and Tobago, and also to improve the experience between Trinidad and Tobago, then all would have been lost. But on the other hand, if the management is there, and the vision is there, and the enthusiasm is there, and the right attitude is there, we are onto something good here. So today, I want to thank all those persons, especially the Minister of Works and Transport, who I have harassed incessantly. There's a rumor going around the cabinet now that the Prime Minister calls people at all hours of the morning and all hours of the night. I suspect Mr. Hines have a hand in that. But some of that is true. Because as the old hand in the business, my job is not to do the work. My job is to get them to do the work. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased that the work has been done. And I may go a little further, and on behalf of my friends of my generation, to say that hard work is for young people. And those of us who are in the category of the older folks, that our reward is to see you work and to see the outcome of your work. Today is a day of rejoicing in Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago. And on behalf of all Tobagonians, I want to invite all Trinidadians to use our vessel. Tobago is open for business. But remember, we are in a pandemic. You are required to follow the health protocols. And Tobagonians are not going to be very happy if you rush and come here. Don't follow the protocols and become a super spreader. Become a tourist from Trinidad or from anywhere else for that matter. Join them in Tobago and enjoy Tobago. Tobago has a lot to offer, especially at this time when we have COVID has removed a lot of the competition from Tobago. It's a time to practice, to be the place of choice for those who want to visit in the Caribbean. A real good practice period. Because if you are able to satisfy the Trinidad population that Tobago is such an excellent vacation place, when we get back to some semblance of difference, not normalcy, because we're never going to be normal again, we are going to go back to a place that is different. When this pandemic has gone, you would now be even better positioned to receive international tourists. And that is what Tobago is now being called upon to do. Prepare to do that, using your practice with the 1 million people in Trinidad. That makes Tobago unique. And this vessel, the A.P.T. James, is a unique piece of infrastructure for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I was very pleased to have been involved somewhere along the way, but I'm even more pleased now to walk on board the new, the exciting, and hopefully the long-living A.P.T. James, owned by all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you for your involvement, and I thank you all for the enthusiasm that you've shown.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, for your reassuring address. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this part of the program this afternoon. Before we proceed to the second part, I just want to thank everyone for coming out and being part of today's
News happens anytime, anywhere. And when it happens, we are there. We report the news in real time. TTT News. Connect.
The winning numbers in the National Lottery online draw